Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Tom Seaver, have you heard of him? Hall of Fame pitcher, best known for being a pitcher on the New York Mets. So when Tom Seaver was late in his career, he's pitching a game, and the pitching coach comes out and says, "You don't have your best stuff today. You got nothing." And Seaver goes, "Yeah." And he gestures at the hitter, and he goes, "But they don't know that." That, my friends, was yesterday's podcast. For scheduling reasons, I needed to tape both yesterday and today. And after all the 20-minute episodes I've done lately, naturally, when I was prepping the show on Wednesday, there was almost nothing new. And I was like, you're kidding me. Couldn't like Katt Williams say something about somebody or something? Now, I had some stories. Today, I had plenty. I had planned on pre-taping today, so I have plenty for today. Today's real. Yesterday, I was like, all right, let me see if I can shuck and jive and get through this. And it worked. It was a pretty good episode. Of the 1,500 or so. I'm not sure it was the greatest episode, but it was perfectly fine, so I was happy with how that came out. Doug Benson has already been scheduled for the Tower City Comedy Festival. You know when that is? January 2025. They announced this super early. It's in Paris, Texas. 3 nights, 15-plus shows, 100-plus comics. Sounds fun. Doug Benson is your headliner. John, are you sure you're not bluffing today? Because you led with Doug Benson's playing a show 9 months from now. Are you sure you're not bluffing today? I'm not bluffing today. This is a high-quality episode. Steve Martin's new documentary is out. Apple TV Plus. Been telling you about this one. It's in 2 parts. The first part focuses on Steve's comedy. The second part, the movies and the banjo and the Hall of Fame lamp and all that. I'll watch part 1. Bill Maher says, "What I've decided to do is not preemptively give up my nervous system to Donald Trump like I did last election cycle, or maybe the last 2 times. If he wins, he wins. I'll do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But none of us have much influence. The country's polarized. It's like a prison yard. You're either on one team or the other. Everybody says they want to be in the middle, but really, they just go to their corners. So either Trump will win or he won't, and then he becomes president. Either he'll blow up the world or put me in Guantanamo Bay or whatever. I just can't worry about it constantly." PaleyFest announced a few moderators. Judd Apatow will moderate Curb Your Enthusiasm on Thursday, April 18th. Patton Oswalt will moderate The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Saturday, April 20th. Some casting news from This Is Spinal Tap. Lars Ulrich, you know him from Metallica, and Chad Smith, that's the guy from Red Hot Chili Peppers. They're going to play drummers in the sequel to This Is Spinal Tap. Now, if you saw the first one, Spinal Tap drummers tend to die. Also in the sequel, Fran Drescher's back, Rob Reiner's back, new additions to the cast, Paul Schaefer. Isn't Schaefer in the first one? Did I imagine that? Yeah, Paul plays Artie Fufkin in the original. Yeah, all right, I didn't imagine that. Maybe I just stink at reading comprehension. Anyway, Schaefer's in the sequel here. In the sequel, we catch up with Spinal Tap as they reunite for one final concert after a 15-year hiatus. They originally wanted to release this month for the 40th anniversary of the original film, March of '84, but there was a strike delay and stuff, and the movie still does not have a release date. Steph Tolev spoke to WPR, and they said crowd work is where Steph really shines. By the way, some of us were talking about Dave Attell's crowd work. Attell is the best. Did you watch Attell's special yet? Watch Attell's special, #1 special of the year. Heckle Steph Tolev at your own risk. Her most viral video is of a man who overstepped and then left the theater. She tells the story. It was at the Comedy Store. I was in another room, so I missed what happened at the beginning of the show. So I came in, and I was talking to this couple, and they ended up not being a couple. They were like boss and employee. And then someone else yelled out, "He sponsored the show, move on," with this tone that was so rude for no reason. And he left. So I got mad because I was like, you can't heckle me and leave. Sorry, I know how this works. You want to kill me? You stay in the room. You deal with it. I convinced the host at the end of the show to bring me back up. I was so pumped to go back on stage. The crowd went nuts, too. They couldn't believe I was back up there. The heckler slunk away once more. And Steph says, then he ended up being rude to me after, texting the guy whose show it was, still making fun of me. I was like, you had your chance. You wasted it. Sorry, you can't be a troll. You trolled me to my face. This is what happens. Johnny, you sure you're not trying to pull a Seaver here? These stories sound pretty generic. From the BBC, you're over Comedy News. Ed Gamble has swapped a hot dog for a cucumber in his advertisements on the subway. He has swapped a hot dog for a cucumber. You dirty listener, I know what's in your mind right now, hot dog, cucumber. Don't act like it's not. You're thinking about food. Yeah, I know what you're thinking about. So Ed Gamble had used a hot dog in his advertisement for a stand-up tour. Hot diggity dog. Makes sense to me. However, Transport for London, aka TfL, does not allow foods high in fat, sugar, and salt to be advertised on its network. Really? A spokesperson for TfL said, following a review of the advert, We advised that elements would need to be removed to ensure it complied with our policy. This is somebody's job. On Instagram, Ed Gamble described the incident as a career highlight, adding, "Eat your greens, kids." So he removed the hot dog and put in a cucumber, but his team kept the ketchup and mustard. Gamble said, "I actually don't have a problem with the TFL regulations. They make sense to me. But the new posters promote something way more harmful. The idea that cucumbers pair well with ketchup and mustard." I'm not sad to have them remove the hot dog. It was only featured on the poster because I wanted to eat during the photo shoot. Hopefully, it's not too late to change the title of the show to Q Diggity Cucumber. Today's Daily Comedy News is brought to you by Monsters, Sharks, and Dinosaurs. It's a podcast, Monsters, Sharks, and Dinosaurs. I love this one. I just wrote a bunch of episodes for it the other day, so I won't even read the proper copy. I'll tell you what we're doing here. You pick a monster, say King Kong, and then we explain how King Kong would kill you. Then we get into the plausibility of, all right, could there be a giant gorilla? How would that work in science and stuff? We take a look at that. And then we take a look at the monsters in popular culture. Are there movies with such a monster? A lot of fun. It was originally a throwaway idea. I said to my business partner, Marc, I'm like, let's do Monsters, Sharks, and Dinosaurs. That was the extent of the idea. And then when I sat down to actually write them, it came out a lot more fun and a lot smarter than I thought. So this morning, I was writing episodes about the Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the mummy. We have episodes about Jaws and Jurassic Park, you know, sharks, dinosaurs. So the show is called Monsters, Sharks, and Dinosaurs. Monsters, Sharks, and Dinosaurs. Wherever you get your podcast, check that one out. The CBC says Just for Laughs has been a launch pad for Canadian comedians. What happens to us without it? Comedian Sam Sferaza writes, a few weeks ago, I was feeling pretty good about being a Canadian comic. I'd flown out to perform on a taping for Just for Laughs Vancouver as part of the next season CBC Gems of the New Wave of Stand-Up series. The morning of my filming, on a typically drizzly Vancouver day, I wrapped myself in a complimentary hotel robe and treated myself to room service. Life was good. Then the JFL announcement. My first thought was, what a devastating blow this would be to Canadian stand-up. My second thought was, could my exorbitant room service be blamed for this? Then I remembered I had paid out of pocket. Just for Laughs is a beacon for Canadian comedy. It's the carrot at the end of the stick that every Canadian comedian is chasing. Whether they admit it or not, it has a hand in creating the very foundation of Canadian stand-up, and as a result, getting booked on the Montreal Festival, the biggest comedy festival in the world, is one of the very few springboards for success in our industry. It has propelled comedians from amateur to something that at least somewhat resembles professional status. Getting on JFL means something. It's a stamp of approval, a sign that you've made it. I'll add an amen to that. Showcases for JFL have all been canceled at the last minute, and comedians like myself that work on these important sets all year long have been left high and dry. Although it says it hopes to resume the festival in 25, that feels like a tall order. The return of the festival is dependent on JPR, that's the Just for Laughs company, pulling off a huge restructuring in a year's time. This will take a lot of innovation and downsizing. No small feat for a large company that has already struggled to pivot. As for other avenues for success, comedians are left with crumbs. There are little to no comedy-specific grants for stand-up. Often, we're grouped together with theater artists in the grant world, forcing us to compete with completely different art forms. Meanwhile, circus arts gets its own category. And hey, no shade to Cirque du Soleil. I just want a fair fight. And if you're thinking, just post your stand-up online, build a following, I can tell you a thing or two as someone with a medium-sized following online. First, the money doesn't come easy because you have to have an online following. And secondly, while festivals are far from the only thing to work toward in comedy, getting an opportunity to perform at a festival like JFL is a huge goalpost that's now in peril. If JFL does come back next year, it's hard to imagine Canadian comedians getting a good deal. Canadian comedians will be the first to tell you it means bringing in more bankable American talent paid for by Canadian taxpayers and artistic institutions. The same criticisms the festival has faced in the past will likely become more ingrained in the future. Speaking of Canada, Canadians are applauding a comedian who expertly shut down an American that insisted on correcting him during a set. Michael Harrison is a New York-based comedian from Saskatchewan. He posted a clip titled, "An American Canadian-splaining Canada to me. What a surprise. We don't have a 13th grade. You've been lied to. I'm sorry to correct you. Yeah, we don't have that. I'm Canadian. Trust me. I'm very aware of what our country has. We actually don't. Ontario had that a long time ago. They don't have it anymore." The woman goes, "You have it." "No, they don't. Trust me. I hate to admit this to you. You're wrong." The audience laughs. He turns to the audience and says, "This is how American that woman is. You're wrong about your country. This is why people don't like you guys as much when you travel to their country, because of that." Mike Glazer's debut comedy album, Life Rules, Mixtape Volume 1, out today on A Special Thing Records, a tight 8 tracks of comedy gold. Mike hit the stage to explain saying yes to life, his love of weed, talent for cooking, having good merch, therapy, and validation. The press release tells us, originally from St. Louis, Mike Glazer is an entertainment juggernaut with extensive credits, including appearances at the 2023 NHL Awards. And no, I didn't forget. I just moved it to the end. Let's see what's happening at Melbourne. Let's say you're listening on Friday, which means in Melbourne it's Saturday. By the way, Sunday's episode of this podcast, already recorded, is a look at up-and-coming Aussie comedians. So a bit of a format breaker. It'll be me just going, hey, here's this guy I've never heard of. Here's a clip. But it's a lot of fun. I think it came out well. I'd love to know what you think of that episode. You can share that in the Facebook group, a Daily Comedy News Podcast group. The Melbourne site, they must have been listening to me complain about it. It loaded a little quicker, and they now have a tab this Saturday, which made it a lot easier for me to do mental gymnastics. Let's see if we can find something with an actual clip today. Tom Ballard's Good Point Well Made says there's a clip, and there is. Let's listen.
We're all making jokes about the name coronavirus. Corona? That's like a beer that I drink. What's next? Peroni virus? Yeah. Look, everyone, there's toilet paper on the news. It was hilarious. Then Tom Hanks got it, and we were like, this is serious. Sheriff Woody is sick. Then Richard Wilkins got it, and we were laughing again. Okay, we were like, oh, no, this is a wonderful news story.
All right, it took me a minute to find a clip there. He drops a lot of F-bombs. I'll give you a note as a guy in a basement doing a podcast talking to a professional comedian. Your particular material doesn't need the F-bomb every third word. Just drop it all. You don't need it. Johnny Mac's not anti-swearing, but, I don't need to do this podcast like, hey, if you enjoyed a effing show, tell a friend about it. They might effing like it too. Like, I don't need to do that. Eater does that comedian. Now, I hear my dog flopping upstairs. My dog is 16 and a half years old, so I'm going to go rescue her. Oh, my God, she just fell again. All right, see you tomorrow.